From this moment onward, consider this space ours. Outsiders, hit the road. Hold up, what's the deal here? What's got both of you fired up? Right after my mother's funeral, my mother-in-law and sister-in-law launched into a relentless tirade against me. My husband tried to intervene, but they kept on going. You're being deceived. Maybe someone's got you under a spell, they jeered. Yep, it's all because your mom coddled you. She's the one who molded you into this. It's all on her. When they started disrespecting my late mother, I snapped. I can handle them trash-talking me, but I won't stand for it when it comes to my mom. I'm Kathy, 35 years young. My husband David, just a tad older, and I crossed paths at work and tied the knot 5 years back. We used to share our space with my mom, creating quite the dynamic household. Looking back, these past 5 years have been a whirlwind. It all started at my dad's real estate firm half a decade ago. With a knack for understanding the ebb and flow of both people and money, I pursued economics in college and applied that know-how to my career. Yet, amidst my strides, there were whispers. Some attributed my success solely to my parentage, dubbing me the boss's daughter instead of acknowledging me by name. And then there was David, the golden boy of sales in the same company, drawing attention from all corners, leaving me on the receiving end of more than a few icy glares. Don't get me wrong, I'm not naive enough to claim all my achievements as solely my own. It's the collective effort of those around me. Still, it grated on me, being boxed in as just the boss's daughter. These trying times, my father passed away. With my brother stepping into his shoes as president, the disdainful glances directed at me only grew sharper. Must have botched something up if your brother's taking the reins now. Guess we'll just call you the president's sister, huh? Normally, I might have brushed it off, but in the wake of my father's funeral, those words cut deep. Mentally exhausted, I found myself grappling with a singular question. What do I truly desire? Even as I tried to soldier on, I felt a void, a lack of inspiration. And then, almost impulsively, I uttered those fateful words to my husband David. I want to be an investor. Instead of dismissing my seemingly outrageous aspiration, he stood by me, offering his unwavering support. When I confessed to my mom my desire to quit my job and delve into investing, her response stunned. You should have pursued what you love from the start, without fretting over your father. Despite the rawness of my father's passing, her words felt like a wake-up call. Previously consumed by the negatives, her smile ignited a newfound resolve within me, one that cared little for the opinions of others. Amidst the chaos of funerals, estate settlements, relocations, and a whirlwind of tasks, I embarked on my journey as an investor. It wasn't all smooth sailing from the get-go, but with the unwavering support of my calm and cheerful husband and my mother's encouraging presence, I pressed on. With a combination of my savings and my father's inheritance, my investments began to bear fruit. Over the years, my income soared far beyond what I earned at my previous job, leading to a deeply fulfilling life. Yet amidst this joy, two shadows loomed large: my mother-in-law and sister-in-law, constant sources of concern. My sister-in-law, 3 years senior to my husband and 4 to me, remains unmarried. Since David and I decided to tie the knot, her demeanor suggested she wasn't exactly thrilled. Even my mother-in-law seemed to view me as nothing more than a privileged daddy's girl, despite my equal footing in the workforce. Despite my father's CEO status, each visit to my in-laws was met with snide remarks. Being the coddled princess, I bet you're useless at housework. It's a woman's duty, you know. Spare David the trouble. Mother-in-law, my own mother taught me well, so I'm quite capable. Besides, with both of us working, David and I share responsibilities. It was his suggestion, actually. But my mother-in-law wouldn't hear of it. Even my sister-in-law couldn't contain her frustration in my presence, insisting it's absurd for a woman to marry yet make her husband do chores. After my father-in-law's passing, my relationship with my mother-in-law and sister-in-law took a nosedive. Must be nice, living off David's earnings and lazing about at home. I'm dealing with so much since my husband's gone. How come you get to live so carefree, Kathy? Mother-in-law, as I've explained before, I earn my keep as an investor. I'm far from idling. If you're truly struggling, I'd suggest finding a way to manage your own finances. Besides, having kids isn't the sole measure of a woman's worth. With my father-in-law's demise, my mother-in-law's fixation on money intensified. She seemed resentful of my perceived ease, despite my commitment to my work as an investor. Yet I wasn't inclined to hand over any cash. Every visit to the in-laws revealed more lavish purchases, making it clear where any allowance would end up. I loved David, a man of unwavering trust, and I chose to shield him from the truth about his family. There came a moment when I found solace in confiding in my own mother. Why can't I conceive? The weight of uncertainty as I approached 35, coupled with incessant inquiries from my mother-in-law about when will you start a family, became overwhelming. Her hurtful words labeling me as useless echoed in my mind, and I couldn't contain my frustration. So I poured out my heart to my mother, seeking understanding. Well, I had you when I was 35, so there's no need to worry. Timing is in God's hands, dear. He'll guide us when the time is right. Her comforting words lifted a burden from my soul. From then on, even amidst my mother-in-law's persistent mentions of children, I found reassurance. Children, after all, are a precious blessing. After enduring 5 tumultuous years, a sense of calm finally settled in. Then, unexpectedly, my world was rocked once more by the sudden passing of my mother. Struck by a subarachnoid hemorrhage, she, my guiding light, slipped away, leaving me engulfed in sorrow. David, my steadfast companion through years of shared life, seemed equally shaken. Despite his kindness and support, the funeral arrived before we could fully grasp the void left by my mother's absence. As mourners gathered to bid farewell to my mother, a former executive at the company my brother now led, among them stood my mother-in-law and sister-in-law. It appeared they had chosen a moment when David was absent. "No need for you to be here, Dolan," my mother-in-law remarked curtly, offering no condolences. They proceeded to sign the register, leaving me stunned by their callousness. Yet upon David's return, their demeanor shifted instantly. "You might be struggling, but Kathy's shock is likely even greater. You need to be there for her," they'd insist, seemingly mindful of my emotions. Later, as exhaustion from the whirlwind of recent days weighed heavily on me, the doorbell pierced the quiet of our home. My husband, ever considerate, answered it, assuming my mother-in-law and sister-in-law had come to offer support. Without a moment's hesitation, he ushered them inside. As they entered the living room, their glances towards me twisted into unpleasant smirks, and then came words I never expected. "From today onwards, this is our domain. Outsiders need to leave, Mom," David exclaimed, his surprise evident. My mother-in-law's words poured forth unabated. "Until now, we've tolerated your presence because your mom was here, but now, only jobless Kathy remains. If you let yourself be leached by such a woman, you'll ruin yourself. We'll move in with you, so you need to divorce Kathy." "Mom, what are you saying? Especially now, and what do you mean by jobless?" I've explained countless times that Kathy is an investor. When you say investor, it sounds like she has a real job, but let's be honest, isn't she just dabbling in stocks? How can such a woman be a wife? You could do so much better. Wait a second, what's all this about badmouthing Kathy? What exactly are you two insinuating? Kathy earns her own keep. Don't belittle her efforts. You're the ones being misled. You've been under Kathy's mom's influence all this time. Haven't you been brainwashed? That's right, Kathy's turned out this way because her mom spoiled her. I can see why David defends her. It's her mom's fault for raising her like this. As my sister-in-law and mother-in-law continued their disparagement of my mom, my simmering anger finally boiled over. I could endure their insults directed at me, but I refused to tolerate any disrespect towards my mom. "Stop tarnishing the memory of my late mother," I seethed, leering at them. Yet they both grinned smugly, showing no hint of remorse. Fine, we get it. You don't want us talking about your mom, huh? Now that the mom who always sided with you and allowed you to be a recluse is gone, it must be tough to face the truth." My fists clenched, trembling with suppressed rage. Taking a deep breath to rein in my emotions, I prepared to fire back, but before I could speak, it was David who stepped in. "That's enough, Mom. Stop speaking ill of Kathy," David interjected firmly, addressing both my mother-in-law and sister-in-law. "Kathy isn't a recluse. She's a legitimate investor. My mother-in-law and I have been supporting Kathy's endeavors from the start. If Kathy were just fooling around, neither of us would have stood for it." Even my mother-in-law, sister-in-law, and I couldn't conceal our surprise at David's uncharacteristically stern tone. My mother-in-law seemed taken aback, scrambling to offer excuses. "Don't be so upset. Nevertheless, Kathy's lifestyle thus far has been sustained by your income, hasn't it? You've provided her with a privileged life, even buying her this lavish condo." Poor David. If you move in with us, we'll take care of all the household chores. Just give us a small allowance. That's all we need. Isn't that right, Mom?" My mother-in-law's words were cut short by David's flustered voice. "This apartment belongs to Kathy." "What?" My mother-in-law's incredulous cry filled the room, her surprise impossible to conceal. She scrutinized David with wide eyes, as if seeking confirmation. "This apartment belongs to Kathy. When did this happen? I never agreed to that. This apartment was part of my father-in-law's legacy, and Kathy inherited it. That's why the title is in her name. Besides, we split the living expenses evenly. I don't understand what you're insinuating, but Kathy earns more than I do." Both my mother-in-law and sister-in-law were taken aback by David's revelation. It was understandable. They couldn't have fathomed that I earned more than him. My mother-in-law's energy waned at David's words, leaving her looking like a deflated balloon. Taking the reins from her, my sister-in-law spoke up. "That's impossible. Do investors really make that much? Just by trading stocks as an individual? I can't speak for other investors, but perhaps Kathy has a knack for it. Regardless, the facts remain. How dare you undermine my beloved wife? This is our home. Stop kidding around, both of you. Leave now." Upon hearing David's words, my sister-in-law spiraled into panic. "What? Hold on. We came here expecting to move in today." "What?" Now it was my turn, along with my husband, to exclaim in surprise. "You sold our house. Why the sudden decision? You could have at least discussed it with me." We thought we could stay here, and we were strapped for cash. I quit my job, assuming you'd support us. If you don't let us stay, we'll be in serious trouble. Mom, please say something." With pleading eyes fixed on David, my sister-in-law shook her mother, who seemed frozen in shock. But the magnitude of the situation left my mother-in-law in a daze. My sister-in-law, her confidence shattered, now clung to me for support. "Hey, Kathy, I'm sorry. Please talk to David for me. We can't go on like this. You mentioned you sold your house, so you must have some money saved up, right?" I spoke coolly to my clinging sister-in-law, prompting her to lash out at me. "Don't act clever. Just because your investments turned out well, don't think you're above everyone else. Know your place. Enough is enough." David's voice boomed, drowning out even my sister-in-law's protests. He fixed a piercing stare on her as she fell silent. "Forget about the house. I won't even demand my share. Just leave right now." With that, my husband practically escorted his mother and sister out, firmly locking the door behind them. For a while, we could hear the persistent ringing of the doorbell and pounding on the door, but eventually the noise faded into silence. After that ordeal, word from relatives had it that my mother-in-law and sister-in-law had secured a modest apartment to rent and were now living together. Their old family home, nestled in a remote area, didn't fetch much on the market, given its location and the value of the land. My sister-in-law struggled to land a decent job, and their funds quickly dwindled. Despite their repeated attempts to rely on David and me, we firmly shut the door each time. They resorted to selling off their designer possessions and now reportedly scrape by with part-time jobs, working tirelessly from dawn till dusk. Meanwhile, I've enjoyed the freedom that comes with being an investor, no longer subjected to hurtful remarks. And as my late mother had foretold, we're preparing to welcome a new member into our family next year. Once again, I'm grateful for her timely blessings.
This house now belongs to our oldest son and his wife. If you're not part of the family, you should leave now. Even though I've been paying the mortgage for this house, my in-laws and husband shocked me with their statements. They've been using me to pay off the mortgage all along. When I found out, I went from feeling thankful to really angry. "Fine then, I'll move out," I said defiantly to their teasing. "I'll show them they shouldn't mess with me." I quickly found someone to help me plan my revenge against them. My name's Michelle Anderson, I'm 48 years old, and I work as a lawyer. Right now, I'm living with my husband and his parents, taking care of them. It all started when I gave a house to my in-laws. I married James when I was 30. Right before our wedding, my father-in-law got hurt and couldn't walk. He had to use a wheelchair, and my mother-in-law was old and needed help too. So, I gave them a house without barriers. At first, we thought about living in public housing, but then we chose a place in between where my husband and I worked. I suggested this so we could get to them fast if there was an emergency. The Anderson family helped me a lot with my dad. "Let me repay the favor," I said. My dad passed away before I got married. Right before he died, he had a lot of debt, which made things really hard for us financially. We struggled getting more debt to pay off the old ones. My husband and his family were the ones who rescued us from this tough situation. James and his parents paid off my dad's debts for us. "If you're worried about marrying because of the debt, wouldn't it be solved if we paid it off?" said James. "That's right, it's debt from a business failing, not from spending recklessly." "We should help," added my mother-in-law. "Yes, we should help each other out when times are tough. There's nothing to be embarrassed about," said my father-in-law. So they helped with most of the debt without saying much. Both my dad and I were really grateful, and I worked hard to pass the bar exam. The total borrowed from my husband's family was about $50,000. I was sure I could pay it back once I became a lawyer. I didn't want the debt hanging over me forever. My main goal was to pass the bar exam and become a lawyer. With a strong promise to pay back the money I owed, I kept studying hard to become a lawyer. With that determination, I buried myself in books, and after lots of effort, finally passed the bar exam. My dad and in-laws celebrated my success, and I was really happy to start my career in law. I found a job quickly and started working at a law firm. The boss was really nice, and I learned a lot from experienced lawyers, getting better at my job over time. Over time, I gained some special clients and now have an important job at the office as a female lawyer, making more than $100,000 a year. Because of my success, I managed to pay back all the money I owed to my dad and my in-laws. But after my mom died, my dad passed away soon after, leaving me alone. That's when James asked me to marry him. He said, "You're strong on your own, but I want to be the one who supports you. I'll always treasure you, so please marry me." His words convinced me, and we decided to get married, hoping for a happy life together. Around that time, sadly, my father-in-law had an accident. Remembering how kind they had been to me before, I offered to build them a new house without barriers. Even though they didn't want to accept, the gratitude I felt was too big to put into words. "Please don't say no. I want you all to live comfortably," I sincerely told them, not just saying it to be nice. They could tell I meant it, and with a small smile, they agreed. But then they added something. "Michelle, why don't you live with us too? We heard you and James are looking for a new house." "That's right. If you don't mind, let's live together. Eventually, this house will be yours." James has an older brother who moved out a few years ago to start his own business. He had an agreement with James that in exchange for taking care of their aging parents, James could use the family stuff freely. Before leaving, he talked to James about this. Moving to the new house would make my commute shorter, and we'd live with James and his parents. Since we could help each other when needed, there was no reason to say no to living together. But I worried I might cause trouble for my in-laws. Before getting married, I had occasionally caused trouble for them, so I worried if living together was right. James sensed my concerns and comforted me, saying, "Don't worry, Michelle. I'm here for you. Let's live together confidently." Encouraged by James, I agreed to live with my in-laws, hoping for a happy life with the four of us. But reality was different from what I expected. Every day, they would ask me for help with small things like finding clothes or fixing the TV remote. They seemed to rely on me for everything, especially my disabled father-in-law, who often touched me without hesitation. "I already hung up your morning clothes, Mom," I reminded her. "That's the air conditioner remote, not the DVD remote. It's on the desk, Dad. Please ask James for help with physical tasks when he's around. I can't always be there for you." I found myself saying these things every day. At first, I tried my best to fulfill the family's needs, even though I was already handling the mortgage and all the household chores. Sometimes I thought about getting a divorce, but James always handled things well, and my in-laws would apologize. Since I didn't feel mistreated, I usually decided not to divorce. Day-to-day life was filled with their dependence and small annoyances, but I felt a bond with them as family, which made me endure it. Still, the thought of divorce crossed my mind now and then. My mother-in-law started showing signs of memory loss, which might be mild dementia or just forgetfulness. It's hard to tell for sure. The questions from my mother-in-law kept increasing, and James, who had promised to help before we got married, turned out to be unreliable in this situation. Living with these uncertainties, I gradually got used to the situation. Through experience, I started handling everything on my own and began speaking up clearly to James and others. But my father-in-law's behavior bothered me a lot. I told James and my mother-in-law, "I can't ignore how Father acts lately. He pretends to have dementia just to touch me, Mom. Please do something. The doctor said. Your father-in-law hasn't been clearly diagnosed with dementia. His symptoms are mild, so it's not certain if it's dementia or not. But my in-laws insisted it was dementia, even though the doctor wasn't sure. I understood if it was really dementia, but using an illness as an excuse to make others tolerate bad behavior wasn't okay. I talked to James and asked my in-laws to address it, but James kept avoiding the issue. When I was almost at my breaking point, something unexpected happened. As I was organizing our finances one holiday afternoon, I saw something in the bank book that made me smile. By the end of that month, we would finally finish paying off the mortgage for my in-laws' house. Filled with a sense of accomplishment, I felt like a heavy weight had been lifted off my shoulders. I was thrilled at the idea of having less financial strain and more money to spend freely, but little did I know, a new challenge was about to emerge. One evening during dinner with the family, James suddenly brought up the topic of the mortgage being paid off. Michelle, the mortgage for this house will be fully paid off this month, right? He asked out of the blue. Since he'd never mentioned the mortgage before, I was surprised by his sudden interest. But he smiled warmly as he poured beer into a glass. Yes, that's correct. But why the sudden interest? I asked. Because we should celebrate, right? You've been through a lot, Michelle. I want to thank you with a big celebration, James explained. His unexpected words touched me deeply. I was moved that James had considered my struggles and wanted to show his appreciation. Despite wishing he'd help more with household chores, I was grateful for his care and concern. His words instantly eased my frustrations, and I couldn't help but smile with joy. James, thank you. Can I look forward to the celebration? James said, sure, we'll talk about it together as a family and get ready. Just hold on, Michelle, feeling relieved by his words. I was excited about getting ready for the celebration, but that happy feeling didn't last. Soon, I realized something wasn't right. I accepted James' invitation without thinking too much. It seemed like my in-laws had also heard about the talk and were planning something together. A few weeks later, James and my in-laws asked to meet me. Since work wasn't too busy and I was in a good mood, it seemed like a perfect time for a celebration. Sorry for calling you in suddenly. We have something important to discuss, James said. It's fine, no worries, I replied. Today, we as a family need to talk to you about something important, Michelle, my father-in-law said. What's going on? I thought it was all about the celebration. So why were they sounding so serious? Hoping they just talk normally, I decided to listen. Well, now that the mortgage payments are ending, we want you to move out, they said. What? I couldn't help but sound surprised. They wanted me to leave once the mortgage was paid off. What did they mean? Was it a mistake? The unexpected words made me think it must be a mix-up. I couldn't understand what James was saying, and I couldn't find the right words to respond. I was just confused. Seeing me like that, my in-laws didn't want to wait for me to figure it out and started explaining. We sold this house to our oldest son and his wife. My father-in-law told me. What? I exclaimed, shocked to the core. My mind was spinning, struggling to grasp what was happening. To be suddenly told to leave the house, and on top of that, to learn that it had been handed over to James' older brother and his wife was beyond belief. What did all my efforts for this family mean now? Did this mean my role was over? But how? I couldn't accept this unfair and unreasonable situation. We have this beautiful house now. Your role here is no longer necessary. We tolerated you until the mortgage was paid off, but now the house belongs to us. You're no longer needed, my mother-in-law continued. I had lived in this house with James's family, feeling grateful towards them. Out of that gratitude, I stayed silent until now. But it hit me that it was all a charade. Even their help to my father and me was part of their plan to get something for me. Realizing this truth, I felt deeply betrayed and disappointed. Being suddenly estranged from a family I trusted was a crushing blow to my mental well-being. The trust I had built over the years shattered instantly. It felt like everything I believed in was just an illusion. My heart ached with the knowledge that they knew I was working hard to become a lawyer to clear my father's debts, so they took a chance, thinking the investment could pay off. It was a ploy to get me to buy the house. We thought we'd get a good return if we showed you kindness since you and James started dating. We figured the investment wouldn't go to waste, she added. When you were grateful for us helping your father and gave us expensive wine as a thank you, we thought you were easy, she continued. It was before my father's business went downhill. We used to be well off. James seemed interested in my family's wealth from the start. He must have seen an opportunity because he knew I wanted to become a lawyer. I trusted James and his family completely, without realizing how naive I was. That's why we came up with this plan. We hope to gain something big by helping your father, he said. Their confident and shocking statements were difficult for me to believe. So, it's worked out perfectly. We have a fantastic new house in our name, and once the mortgage is paid off, it's all ours. What we do with our property is none of your concern, they declared. Their words were full of planning and determination, and I struggled to accept the truth. It took me a while to realize that everything had been orchestrated from the start. For 13 years, they had been patiently waiting for this moment. They never truly cared for me or my father. We were just a means to an end. Their plan was to get close to our family right from the beginning, and we fell into their trap without realizing. Faced with this shocking revelation, darkness consumed my heart. I felt like I was standing on the edge of a cliff, drowning in despair. I couldn't grasp everything they had planned and executed, so outsiders should leave this house immediately. You have no place here anymore, their words cut even deeper into my wounded heart. Realizing I was no longer welcome in this house left me speechless. This place, once filled with peace, love, and warmth, now felt empty and cold. A chapter of my life had closed, and I was about to embark on a new, lonely journey. Your belongings need to be packed, James. You can't leave immediately, or you'll be in trouble. Let's do it tomorrow. I'll give you until then to pack properly and leave, my mother-in-law declared. This house now belongs to the Anderson family, my father-in-law added. And I'll get the divorce sorted out. There's no point in us staying together anymore, and I'm tired of your complaints. Make sure you've signed the papers by the time you leave this house tomorrow, James said. The words Anderson family hit me hard. It was now crystal clear that I had never truly been accepted by them. Was I treated unfairly, forced to work tirelessly and juggle house chores and my job because I wasn't seen as part of the family? All my doubts blended together, leaving me with only a bitter smile. I was fooled by your family right from the start, I whispered. That's right. Are you stupid? Don't you understand? James snapped. His words shattered something inside me. I lowered my gaze, then slowly lifted my head, forcing a smile as I gave an unexpected reply to my in-laws. Then I'll leave, I said. My heart couldn't find a reason to stay with the Anderson family anymore. All those days were filled with deceit. From now on, my life will take a new path. As I suddenly showed a cheerful face and decided to leave the house without a heavy heart, my in-laws couldn't hide their surprise. Quite obedient, aren't you? Got something up your sleeve? My mother-in-law asked suspiciously. No plans, I replied. Hearing such an unbelievable story, I felt like my life had hit rock bottom, and my love for their family disappeared in an instant. I'll pack up my things right away and leave. I'll sign the divorce papers properly. My lawyer will get in touch with you about dividing the property. Goodbye and thank you for everything, I said without waiting for my in-laws' response. I went back to my room and packed my belongings, holding back my tears as I planned my next steps. After being treated so badly, I couldn't just let it go quietly. I couldn't find peace until they felt the pain, suffering, and unfairness I had endured. While packing, I calmly thought of ways to get back at them. I planned carefully how to hurt them the most. Many ideas crossed my mind as I considered my next moves. My anger and disappointment towards my in-laws were overwhelming, but I stayed composed, searching for the best way to handle the situation. My revenge had to be more than just emotional. They needed to understand the consequences of their actions. My new life started there. While packing, my phone rang suddenly. Seeing the caller's name, a plan formed in my mind. I was sure this person would support me, so I answered without hesitation. After explaining my situation, the caller listened carefully and we promptly made a plan for the future. Once I finished packing, I quietly left the house I had lived in for years, without saying a word to James and his family. I decided to cut all ties with them, so I deleted their contacts from my phone, determined not to respond to any communication from them. My decision soon paid off. The day after I left, I received numerous frantic calls from my in-laws. Although I had deleted their numbers, their long association weighed heavily on my mind. That morning, they must have realized I had left and understood what had happened. However, I had no intention of answering their calls. As I looked at my phone, I felt a sense of empowerment over my decision and smiled lightly. At that moment, the person who had provided me with a new place to live reassured me, saying, "You don't have to answer the phone at all." I gratefully nodded at his words. I was ready to take the first step towards a fresh start. My life was about to begin a new chapter in a new environment. As the calls from my mother-in-law ceased, James began bombarding me with his own calls. Each one felt like unbearable noise. Finally, unable to take it anymore, I turned off my phone and, without turning it back on, canceled the service. It was a clear message that I was ending things with James. 3 months went by, and I had started a new life in a fresh apartment, away from the stress of living with my in-laws. I could focus more on my work, and my daily life became more satisfying. I embraced life to the fullest, free from the constraints of the past. People noticed a change in me post-divorce. I radiated happiness, and my demeanor became more cheerful and friendly. This transformation didn't go unnoticed, and I received many compliments. Despite the mental strain from my past relationship with my in-laws, I decided to nurture my relationships with colleagues at work and foster positive connections. I resolved to put more effort into my job and prioritize communication with my coworkers. As I made this decision, the receptionist at my office appeared on the floor in a panic, urgently informing me, "Miss Cohen, there's a parent and child at the reception looking for you." Cohen was my maiden name, which I retained after the divorce. Hearing her report, I hurried to the reception to find out what was going on. The usually composed receptionist's agitation signaled that something was amiss. Something significant must have caused her distress. Seeing her worried expression, I wanted to offer support, and a male colleague, sensing her state, volunteered to accompany me. Together, we made our way to the lobby. Upon arrival, my expression shifted dramatically as I laid eyes on who was there. My mother-in-law and James. They were causing a scene, loudly berating me for cutting off contact. Their irrational behavior left me stunned and questioning. Others in the office couldn't hide their shock at their actions. Their worn-out appearances, filled with anger, stood out after months of absence. Recognizing the abnormal situation, the reception staff alerted upper management, and soon the office manager appeared in the lobby. "Miss Cohen, a meeting room is ready. Shall we have a discussion there with your in-laws?" "I'll inform him," the manager suggested. Having already briefed the manager on everything, I agreed to the suggestion. Feeling uneasy about going alone, I brought my colleague with me. He was the lawyer I had hired for the matter with James, so they allowed his presence. Heading to the meeting room, I tried to suppress my confusion and agitation. Despite my inner turmoil and anxiety about what lay ahead, I found some relief in the manager's calm demeanor and resolved to proceed step by step. As we walked to the meeting room, my mother-in-law and James glared at me with anger. Despite their dire situation, they seemed displeased to see me thriving at work. Their gaze and attitude left no doubt about their feelings. Sitting across from my in-laws, we exchanged tense glances, and then the manager entered the meeting room with someone else. "Sorry I'm late." "What? Why are you here?" The person the manager brought was James's brother, my brother-in-law. He stood there, glaring at the two with an angry expression. "There's nothing to say. You guys have really done something ridiculous." My brother-in-law used to be a gang leader in his youth, but now runs his own construction company. His employees call him boss, and he can't stand unjust behavior. When I lost my place to live, he helped me out for several weeks in a women's dormitory. He was already aware of the situation with my in-laws' house and, after hearing the details, offered his support right away. Why didn't he know when my in-laws told me to leave the house? They said they had sold it to their eldest son and his wife. I found out everything from Susan and confirmed it. You didn't think you could do such a horrible thing to Michelle and get away with it, did you? As soon as Susan's name was mentioned, James and his mother looked astonished. Susan, his wife and the mastermind behind this incident, had always harbored hostility towards me. Despite my brother-in-law's wishes, she had been a housewife up to this point. It wasn't my brother-in-law's instruction, but her own decision. She believed women were meant to be homemakers, as her own parents had been. So housekeeping was natural for her, and she saw women who defied this as not real women. When Susan saw me, she probably viewed me with envy. My dedication to work for nearly 40 years might have seemed dazzling to her. Additionally, Susan wasn't skilled at cooking. Even my brother-in-law and father-in-law had asked my mother-in-law to teach her, as I had heard from James. On the other hand, I managed household chores well while balancing my job. Perhaps she envied my ability to handle everything efficiently. Every time Susan encountered me, she made snide remarks. She accused me of neglecting household duties or leaving them to my husband, hurling harsh words at me for decades. However, my brother-in-law always intervened, which likely added to Susan's dissatisfaction. He supported Susan's desire to work and helped with household tasks. Susan's inaction in improving her situation was her own choice, and it was unfair for her to take out her frustrations on others. When my brother-in-law warned Susan, she redirected her discontent towards me. Susan confessed that she had orchestrated the entire plan to take over the house and pressure me into buying it. She manipulated my mother-in-law and father-in-law to execute this scheme. They'd probably believed they could obtain their own house and continue pretending to be senile, leaving me unable to object. They had found ways to orchestrate the plan without involving my brother-in-law, whom they couldn't contact because of Susan. James had also accepted a reward for assisting them in this scheme, making them all accomplices. The only person unaware was my brother-in-law, who would have stopped such foolish actions if he had known. This likely filled him with regret, explaining why everyone behaved timidly whenever he visited. When my brother-in-law came over, my parents-in-law didn't take any action, likely fearing the consequences if he found out about the situation. The manager and my colleagues watched my in-laws with astonishment. So, how do we proceed? I have no intention of forgiving even a fraction of the insult I received, let alone the trouble caused to Michelle, I stated firmly. But it was Susan's suggestion, James protested. That's right. We were just misled by clever words. It wasn't intentional, my mother-in-law added. At James' statement, my patience wore thin. I stood up, my face burning with anger, and yelled at my mother-in-law and James. How can you claim innocence after such a betrayal? Do you have any idea how much pain I've endured in these 13 years? My suppressed emotions burst forth, and tears of anger and frustration streamed down my cheeks. My mother-in-law and James had never seen me cry before, no matter the hardship I faced. Even when my father-in-law was wrongly considered senile and acted recklessly, I never shed a tear. In their eyes, I was always a strong woman who never faltered. Seeing me raise my voice and cry must have been shocking for them. Do you realize how grateful I was to you? How much I wanted to repay you? And now to discover that your care for my father was driven by such selfish motives. I may forgive you, but I will never forget. With those words as a cue, my brother-in-law brought someone into the meeting room, a man in a black suit. He sat opposite us, his gaze fixed on my in-laws. He will have to take responsibility for this, he declared. Faced with this unexpected turn of events, my mother-in-law exclaimed in surprise. This man is my lawyer, hired by my brother-in-law. He is a respected attorney in our office, like a mentor to me. We intend to seek compensation for the unfair treatment I've endured, I explained. What do you mean? It's pointless to dwell on the past now, James argued. The past is irrelevant now. The lawyer, who had been quietly listening to my in-laws, adjusted his glasses and calmly refuted them. The current evidence and the basis for the future claim of damages make the lawsuit fully feasible, especially since there was no agreement not to claim property at the time of the divorce. In this case, there is no specific time limit for claiming compensation. As he spoke, the lawyer took out a SSD from his pocket, leaving my in-laws confused. What is that? My mother-in-law asked. This is the record Michelle has been keeping. Her PC was equipped with a camera for remote meetings, and all your wrongful actions have been saved as data, the lawyer explained. My in-laws' expressions turned pale upon learning this truth. Michelle mostly worked in the living room, didn't she? Modern laptops often have built-in cameras, and your harassment in the living room has backfired, the lawyer said before pocketing the SSD. He then turned to my in-laws, stating firmly, the ownership of the house is already in Michelle's name, and your eviction is just a matter of time. We will proceed with legal action promptly, so please prepare the funds. Wait, you're saying it's changed to her name? James reacted to the lawyer's statement. In response, my brother-in-law raised his voice. I asked Michelle to change the ownership to her name. Thanks to you putting it in Susan's name without permission, the change was surprisingly easy. Anything to say about that? My brother-in-law taunted James with a mischievous smile. James, who had never won a fight against his brother since childhood, couldn't argue back. and my mother-in-law also remained silent. I will also properly bill you for all the expenses involved in that transfer. That's only fair, right? After all, it was your wrongful actions. If you don't deal with what you've started, we'll be in trouble too, said my brother-in-law, folding his arms and standing imposingly. Wait, you're saying it's changed to her name? He added sternly, throwing the words at them. The two were left speechless before my brother-in-law's firm demeanor. He had also informed Susan, his wife and the mastermind behind this ordeal, about the situation. After resolving this matter, he expressed his intention to divorce her over the phone. I'm really sorry for involving you in this, Michelle. Even though I didn't know, I will support you fully until you are satisfied. Let me know any requests you have. It's my family who did this, so I have a responsibility too. My brother-in-law apologized sincerely, and I nodded in gratitude. This outcome was a significant achievement for me, especially considering that the maximum amount for moral harassment compensation is usually around $30,000. I felt nothing but gratitude. Fortunately, the house was returned to my possession within a few days. With my brother-in-law's supervision, the furniture and appliances were also moved back, and everything was successfully recovered. Currently, the house is being used as a rental property. It's too big for me, and with its good location and accessible features, it seemed wasteful not to utilize it. Following my brother-in-law's advice, I started renting it out. Susan is busy with work, trying to pay off her debts. Following my brother-in-law's instructions, she works tirelessly from morning till night, and my mother-in-law and James are in similar situations. My father-in-law, unable to work due to his disability, contributes from his pension towards the debt repayment, and they seem to be leading a challenging life. I feel relieved knowing my brother-in-law is a reliable person. Years have passed since then, and I continue my work as a lawyer. Thanks to my brother-in-law, the monthly payments are going smoothly, and it's expected to be paid off by next year. Despite often contemplating giving up amidst the hardships, I held on to the belief that my efforts would be rewarded someday. That belief has become a reality, and I live each day with gratitude. It appears our working styles just aren't compatible. Starting tomorrow, there's no need for you to come in, I declared, feeling I had reached my breaking point. I couldn't continue working under such leadership any longer, so I made my decision on the spot. Understood. I'll tender my resignation effective immediately. Thank you for the opportunity, I replied calmly, though inside I lamented leaving a job I once cherished. As I adjusted to the hectic pace of my days, a new clerk approached me with news of a visitor. Curious, I made my way to the reception room, where I found Samantha waiting. John, please reconsider returning to our company, Samantha implored, surprising me with her humility. Gone was the stern, demanding figure I once knew. My name is John Baker, and I have been dedicated to our boutique couture shop in this small town for 20 years. Despite its couture label, our clientele for bespoke items has diminished, prompting us to expand our offerings to include suits, shirts, and even school uniforms to sustain our business. Despite the changing landscape, I've always cherished our shop for its strong community roots and values. However, the atmosphere shifted when our long-standing president fell ill. He was the visionary behind our establishment, but as his health declined, his granddaughter Samantha Smith, with no prior industry experience, assumed leadership. While the transition occurred smoothly, Samantha's approach to management left much to be desired. I found myself particularly singled out by her harsh scrutiny. Samantha, how are our sales faring recently? I urge you to secure new contracts promptly, she demanded, clearly irritable. I've been actively seeking opportunities, but it's challenging to attract clients interested in couture. The decline in demand is evident, and our traditional couture model is facing challenges, I explained, attempting to provide context. However, Samantha's response was unforgiving. I don't want excuses. It's not a matter of impossibility, it's a matter of effort. Until you bring in new contracts, merely servicing existing clients won't suffice. I expect you to expand our client base, she retorted with a heavy sigh, leaving little room for discussion. Don't assume you're here indefinitely. Spend more time networking outside. Don't return until you've clinched a contract, Samantha commanded, rising from her seat, her designer bag and impeccably tailored suit serving as symbols of her authority as the company's president. However, her penchant for spending work hours at spas and salons eroded the respect of her employees. Taking a break, Miss President? We have a 3:00 p.m. meeting regarding the uniforms. I interjected, only to be met with Samantha slamming her bag onto the desk with a resounding thud. A break? Let me make this clear, a president doesn't take breaks. It's frustrating to be lumped together with regular employees. Opportunities can arise unexpectedly, and it's crucial to maintain a visible presence. Think before you speak, she reprimanded sharply, before briskly making her exit, the glimmer of her ostentatious diamond necklace almost blinding in its brilliance. As the lunch break commenced, I hastily devoured my meal, reminiscing about the days when leisurely lunches were the norm before the previous president's departure. Since Samantha assumed control, the luxury of idle chatter and shared takeout had vanished. Instead, there was an unrelenting emphasis on performance metrics and contract acquisition, with Samantha often remarking, "If you have time for lunch, you have time to sell." It was a stark departure from the camaraderie we once shared, leaving me wistful for those bygone days. However, sentimentality must take a backseat today. Amidst my packed schedule of client visits, securing a new contract is imperative. While skipping pleasantries with established clients could potentially increase sales visits, I remain steadfast in my belief that nurturing personal connections is paramount. There's a unique joy in collaborating with trusted tailors and selecting couture pieces together, fostering a sense of trust that transcends mere transactions. It's these enduring relationships that compel customers to invest in our couture for their special occasions. Despite the pressing time constraints, I ensure to extend genuine greetings to our suppliers and loyal clientele. Visiting the home of an elderly customer who had entrusted me with her granddaughter's wedding couture, I inquire of the recent nuptials. The warmth in her recounting of the celebration and her satisfaction with our couture fills me with genuine happiness. When she entrusted me with her other granddaughter's wedding attire, it was truly a moment of joy. As the day unfolds, the dwindling time leaves little opportunity to pursue potential clients, resulting in a lack of new contracts secured. With the clock striking 2, I reluctantly begin my return to the office, knowing I must hurry to make it in time for the impending meeting. Each step feels heavier with the weight of unfulfilled expectations. Upon my return, Samantha's probing words greeted me, igniting a sense of dread. Her assumption that I must have secured a contract due to my absence from slacking off left me speechless. Samantha's presence, unusually early for once, seemed to amplify the tension in the room, threatening to unravel my composure. My hesitant response only seemed to exacerbate Samantha's displeasure as she kicked the desk, her voice escalating in frustration. "No results? You're becoming a liability to the company. Perhaps it's time you started looking for a new job. There's no shortage of skilled individuals, unlike someone in their 40s with no discernible talents." Her words stung, fueling my irritation as I reluctantly shared the modest progress I had achieved. Despite the positive feedback from a client who expressed interest in utilizing our services again, Samantha's reaction was far from encouraging. "And when will this potential sale materialize? How many items? At what price point? Is this a one-time occurrence or a recurring agreement?" Samantha's interrogation continued, her tone devoid of warmth or understanding, further deepening my frustration. "Listen, you seem to confuse socializing with sales. Sales isn't complete until the product is delivered and the invoice is sent. It serves us no purpose to inflate the significance of your casual conversations and boast about them." Though I felt the urge to retort against Samantha's assertion, the reality remained that I had failed to secure any new contracts. Determined to prove her wrong, I resolved to redouble my efforts and secure a contract the following day. As I began organizing for the impending meeting, Samantha unexpectedly interjected. "Change of plans. I have an appointment to attend, so let's postpone the meeting report until tomorrow," Samantha announced, already preparing to leave. Caught off guard, I couldn't help but question her decision. "Wait a moment, I was under the impression we had a meeting scheduled for today. If we don't confirm and proceed with the orders now, we risk missing deadlines. Your presence as the president is crucial. Is this appointment truly unavoidable?" I queried, met with an unmistakably irritated expression from Samantha. "It's an important dinner engagement. I don't have time to spare on this matter, so I'm leaving now," Samantha asserted, her tone brisk as she made her way towards the exit. Just before departing, she turned back to address me. "Remember, your job isn't finished after the meeting. Once the orders are placed, go out and secure at least one new contract. And don't expect any overtime pay, so give it your all," Samantha remarked with a hearty laugh before exiting, leaving behind a puzzled meeting attendee who had expected the president's presence. However, I managed to reassure them and salvage the situation. In our small-scale company, trust is paramount. This was a principle instilled by the previous president, who led by example, always attending sales meetings and diligently overseeing deliveries. It was this commitment to service that garnered trust from our community, sustaining our business thus far. Yet lately, I sensed a decline in that trust. Determined to restore it, I resolved to handle the situation with integrity and secure orders as usual. After seeing off our business partners and gaining their understanding, I immediately began preparations for further sales visits. I'll be stepping out for a while, so feel free to leave when you're ready. Thank you all for today, I announced to my colleagues, eager to take proactive steps towards rebuilding trust in our company. It was already nightfall, the workday long over, as I exchanged greetings with a few remaining colleagues before embarking on my sales rounds. The following day, I arrived at the office with renewed vigor. The previous day's cold calls had yielded promising results. I had engaged with a potential client interested in revamping their company's uniforms. Though not a major corporation, our conversation flowed smoothly, culminating in the agreement of a contract on the spot. While the initial order only encompassed summer apparel and winter sweaters, the prospect of nurturing this client relationship could lead to lucrative opportunities, including renewals and referrals to other businesses. Aware of the potential of such connections, I felt buoyant, anticipating a positive report to Samantha. However, my optimism was short-lived. Samantha, who arrived slightly late, summoned me immediately. "John, don't we have a report from yesterday's meeting? And I want to hear about your subsequent activities." "Certainly, I'll provide the report now," I responded, approaching Samantha with a sense of eagerness. Yet, upon reaching her, I noticed her rubbing her temples wearily. "Are you all right? You seem unwell, Miss President." "Just proceed," was her curt reply. A faint odor of alcohol lingered in the air, indicating she had indulged until the early hours and was now feeling the effects. Seeing Samantha in such a state left me incredulous. Despite my astonishment, I succinctly recounted the events of the previous day. We proceeded with the order as usual for this year. There was some negotiation on price, but they understood that it wouldn't change moving forward, and then... "Wait a minute, they requested a discount, didn't they? And you resisted?" Insisting on raising prices, Samantha interjected, her bloodshot eyes fixed on me with intensity. "No, that's not the case. While we ideally would adjust prices to account for inflation, given that we're offering similar products to other companies, it's challenging to implement such changes without impacting their profit margins. Unfortunately, they weren't receptive to that idea," I clarified, bracing for Samantha's reaction. Infuriated by my response, Samantha lashed out. "That's precisely why they're taking advantage of us. We need to assert ourselves like they do. What's your plan? It's not about their profits. Our profitability should be the priority." Though she held the title of president, I couldn't align with Samantha's viewpoint. While assertive negotiation is crucial, prioritizing one party's profit over the other can be detrimental, particularly in intercompany transactions. Recognizing that further debate would only escalate tensions, I proceeded with my report from the previous day. "We'll reassess the pricing structure moving forward. Additionally, I'm pleased to report that we've secured a new contract," I announced, hoping to garner at least a modicum of approval from Samantha. "Not bad. What's the projected profit margin?" Samantha inquired, displaying a faint glimmer of interest. "We've acquired an order for summer clothing and winter sweaters from a small-sized company with a few dozen employees. While it's not a monumental contract, it represents a promising foothold for potential future opportunities," I explained, eager to highlight the potential for growth. However, Samantha's response was disheartening. "Is that all? And it's not even culture? It seems your efforts outside of regular work hours have yielded little." "Truly disappointing," Samantha remarked, her words piercing through my optimism. At that moment, I felt a surge of frustration and disillusionment wash over me, reaching my breaking point. "Excuse me, but it seems you misunderstand the nature of this job. It's the relationships and connections we cultivate that drive our success, not just immediate profits," I asserted firmly, challenging Samantha's narrow focus. Though taken aback by my boldness, Samantha quickly reverted to her usual haughty demeanor. "Understood. It appears we're not compatible." "You needn't come in from tomorrow," Samantha declared, drawing a decisive line. I had reached my breaking point. Continuing under such leadership was untenable. "Understood. I resign effective today. Thank you for the opportunity," I responded without hesitation, knowing that I couldn't continue in an environment that disregarded the importance of meaningful connections. With that, the decision was made for me to leave the job I once loved. Alone in the empty room, I grappled with uncertainty about my future. Despite leaving abruptly, I had nowhere to turn. My modest salary had left me with little in savings, and the prospect of financial instability loomed large. Then, unexpectedly, a familiar name flashed across my smartphone screen: Tom Wilson. We had attended college together, sharing fond memories and occasional outings. Though our interactions had dwindled in recent years, the call from an old friend filled me with hope. "Long time no see, how have you been?" Tom's voice carried warmth and familiarity, offering a glimmer of comfort in my moment of uncertainty. "Indeed, it's been too long. I'm doing well. You sound great too, John." Tom greeted me warmly, though his next words cast a shadow over our conversation. "How's work?" "Knowing you, John, I'd imagine you're excelling as a capable leader with a strong support network." "It's a bit complicated. I've actually been unemployed for a while now," I confessed, feeling a pang of disappointment even in Tom's sympathetic response. Despite his usual upbeat demeanor, Tom seemed momentarily at a loss for words. "It's been challenging," I added, trying to lighten the mood. "It must have been tough. Let's not dwell on it over the phone. How about we meet up for drinks? It's a sudden invitation, but what do you say about today?" Tom proposed, and I eagerly accepted. The prospect of catching up with an old friend was a welcome distraction, and I felt a deep-seated need to confide in someone. We settled on a pub we used to frequent and agreed to meet later that day. I was taken aback. You clashing with the president and leaving the company in such a dramatic fashion. You used to avoid conflicts at all costs, always quick to apologize even when it wasn't warranted, Tom remarked, genuinely surprised by my recent upheaval. I was surprised myself. But I couldn't reconcile with the new president's approach. It's one thing not to understand the intricacies of fieldwork, but disregarding the needs of clients and partners entirely was a deal-breaker, I explained, grateful for Tom's receptive ear. Despite years of distance between us, I was comforted by the familiarity and openness of our conversation. "Did you always work in sales at that company?" Tom inquired, delving deeper into my professional history. Sales was certainly a big part of my role, but I also dabbled in website development and attempted to introduce new products. It was enjoyable, but unfortunately, budget constraints hindered our progress. I explained to Tom while showing him the company's website on my smartphone, proudly revealing that I had created it myself. "Did you really design this? I assumed it was outsourced. It's just as professional as any other site," Tom marveled, impressed by my handiwork. The previous president emphasized the importance of a website that would appeal to younger demographics, so I dedicated myself to learning. While couture is undeniably beautiful, the industry is facing challenges. I had to think outside the box, I elaborated, recalling the efforts I had invested in the project. "But with our company's size, there are limitations," Tom observed, leaning in attentively as I continued. "True, but I had ideas that I wasn't able to fully realize," I confessed, seizing the opportunity to share my aspirations with Tom. "The demand for everyday culture may be declining, but there's a growing need for attire for special occasions and social media appearances. By focusing on these niche markets and catering to inbound demand, I believe we can chart a successful course forward," I explained passionately, articulating my vision for the future. Indeed, I had aspirations beyond just culture. I envisioned introducing high-quality leather goods under our brand at a slightly lower price point. Offering consumers affordable yet luxurious products would not only be appreciated, but could also yield substantial profit margins. "We can't rely solely on thin margins to sustain our business," I explained to Tom, elaborating on my vision for diversification. Tom listened intently, his arms crossed as he contemplated my words. "So, was it the lack of initial investment, or did you abandon the idea due to insufficient funds?" "It was a combination of both, along with the current president's strong opposition," I admitted. She argued that a culture shop shouldn't stray into other ventures. I understood her desire to preserve the legacy of the previous owner's cherished culture shop without deviating from tradition. However, it's becoming increasingly difficult to resist the inevitable changes brought about by time and the declining industry. I had hoped to inject new ideas into the company, but they weren't well received. Finishing his beer in one gulp, Tom turned to me with a serious expression. "John, how about joining my company? I'll offer you a fixed salary equivalent to what you were earning, plus commission on sales. It's a pretty good deal, don't you think? His eyes held a sense of determination. I was taken aback by Tom's offer to join his company. I had known he was running his own brand as a sole proprietor, primarily online without a physical store, but I never imagined he could afford to hire someone like me. When I expressed my surprise and sought confirmation, Tom chuckled and reassured me, "You underestimate me. While my main business operates online, relying on outsourcing alone isn't sustainable in the long run. It's time for expansion, and I believe bringing you on board is the right move." He leaned in, whispering the impressive turnover of his store and his monthly earnings, leaving me in shock. The amount he made in a month far exceeded my yearly income. "So, I'm looking forward to having you join us. I'll be counting on you starting next week," Tom concluded, and we agreed to formalize the contract later, sealing my employment at his company. Upon joining Tom's company, I wasted no time in making an impact. I revamped the website, making product searches easier and more intuitive. The result was a tenfold increase in page views almost immediately. Additionally, I introduced suits and leather accessories to augment the range of products, which had previously consisted mainly of t-shirts. The quality and usability of these new additions were well received, and positive word of mouth quickly translated into increased sales that outstripped those of the t-shirts. Hey, the orders just keep pouring in, but production can't keep up. Can you help us out?" Tom exclaimed, overwhelmed by the surge in demand. Offering high-quality products at affordable prices, coupled with the brand reliability he had built over time, I felt a sense of fulfillment being able to implement ideas that were previously hindered by budget constraints. As purchase notifications continued to flood in on the tablet, I realized production was nearing its limit, leaving Tom both pleased and scratching his head. "Your former company let go of a real talent. It's not just about timing or environment, it takes skill. But I appreciate the compliment," I admitted humbly, reflecting on the journey that led me to this moment of success alongside Tom. As my smartphone rang, displaying Samantha's name on the screen, I couldn't help but feel a pang of apprehension. Curiosity got the better of me, and I nervously answered the call. "Hello, John. Something terrible has occurred. Can you return? I need you back right away. Is that possible?" Samantha's voice sounded more frantic than I had ever heard it, prompting me to listen intently. "What's happened?" I inquired, my concern growing with each passing moment. "Our couture clientele has threatened to take their business elsewhere if you're not present. Additionally, our partners are specifically requesting your involvement, and the company website is experiencing ongoing issues due to a lack of updates. Can you return promptly to assist?" Even though I had parted ways with the company, I responded courteously. "I understand the urgency, but I don't believe it's appropriate for me to directly engage with clients anymore. However, I'm willing to address the website and system issues on my next day off." I didn't formally hand over that responsibility, so I accept full responsibility for any oversights, I explained calmly, attempting to offer a reasonable solution. Despite my efforts to accommodate, Samantha's response indicated dissatisfaction. "What you mean? Just come back. Considering everything the company has done for you, why are you hesitating?" Samantha's tone was a mix of urgency and frustration. "I was let go from the company. Are you suggesting a rehire?" I questioned, trying to clarify the situation. "Don't be so arrogant. I assume you're struggling financially now, right? I can offer you the same salary as before, so there's no need to worry," Samantha retorted, her tone dripping with condescension. "Apologies for the interruption," Tom interjected, unable to contain his laughter. He mimed a gesture of encouragement, silently urging me to stand my ground against Samantha's presumptuous offer. "Do you have any idea about my current salary? I likely earn in a month what you make in a year. In fact, my current salary could surpass the annual revenue of my former company within just a few months," I calmly asserted, making it clear that financial incentives weren't a compelling reason for me to return to my old workplace. Despite cherishing memories from my previous job, I found fulfillment in my current position and had no desire to work under such leadership again. After politely bidding Samantha farewell, I ended the call. Since joining Tom's company, our operations had grown exponentially. With my contributions, we forged partnerships with outsourcing firms and attracted new talent, leading to rapid expansion. Witnessing the success of products I helped develop being embraced by consumers and shared across social media, I felt a profound sense of satisfaction. Amidst my hectic schedule, I was interrupted by a message from a newly hired clerk informing me of a visitor. Intrigued, I made my way to the reception room, where I was surprised to find Samantha waiting. "John, I'm begging you, please reconsider coming back to our company," Samantha pleaded, her desperation palpable. Despite her earnest plea, I remained resolute in my decision to move forward and declined her offer. "What happened?" "Let's hear the details first," I urged Samantha, guiding her to sit on the sofa. She appeared visibly worn out, a stark contrast to her once vibrant demeanor. "Since you left, we've been hemorrhaging customers. It's not just individual clients. Even our corporate partnerships are crumbling. I can barely cover the employees' salaries anymore. If things continue like this, we'll be forced to shut down the shop." "I need your help," Samantha confessed, her voice tinged with desperation. While I couldn't help but sympathize with Samantha's plight, it was clear that she had brought this situation upon herself by prioritizing profits over communication and relationship building. It was inevitable that partners would abandon ship if they felt neglected. "I'd like to assist, but I'm currently overwhelmed with responsibilities at my current company. I'm sorry, but I can't offer you immediate help," I responded, regret lacing my words. In a last-ditch effort, Samantha implored me for assistance, clutching at straws. "Samantha, it's time to gather your strength. Have you exhausted all possible avenues? Now is the moment to take decisive action. Rebuilding trust requires face-to-face interactions, understanding their needs, and showing empathy for their concerns. Please dedicate yourself to what you've neglected until now. It's the only way forward," I advised firmly yet empathetically. With newfound resolve, Samantha wiped away her tears and nodded resolutely. "You're right. I've made mistakes, but I'll start rectifying them from this moment onward." As I reflected on Samantha's plea for help, I couldn't shake the feeling of powerlessness that gripped me. Despite my genuine desire to assist, the prospect of starting anew seemed daunting and nearly impossible. Thoughts of the predecessor to whom I owed so much weighed heavily on my mind. I was determined to prevent the beloved company from succumbing to bankruptcy, but amidst the demands of my current responsibilities, I struggled to conceive of any actionable solutions. Frustrated, I bit my lip, grappling with the enormity of the situation. Several years had passed since I joined Tom's company, and during that time, our growth had been exponential. With each expansion came an increase in the number of companies we engaged with. "John, what do you think of this?" "I believe it would be perfect for an important dinner date," Samantha proposed eagerly, seeking my opinion. "It's fantastic. Exactly as I envisioned, and the fabric is exquisite," I replied, genuinely impressed. The response to our announcement on social media was overwhelmingly positive, culminating in a significant order placement. "We'd like to place an order worth $50,000 with your company for now." "Thank you so much," the client expressed their gratitude. Following this successful transaction, the performance of Tom's company soared to new heights, prompting the establishment of new departments and the hiring of additional staff. I played a pivotal role in developing hit products, particularly in the suit department. By infusing culture designs and fabrics as accents into our suits, we garnered praise not only from domestic customers but also from international clientele, expanding our market rapidly. The challenge of securing a steady supply of quality fabric and forging connections with culture-focused companies led me to reach out to Samantha for assistance. To my surprise, Samantha not only sourced the fabric we needed, but also provided invaluable consumer-oriented suggestions, resulting in a product that exceeded our initial expectations. "I truly appreciate your help, Samantha." "Thank you," I expressed my gratitude, noting the slight blush that colored Samantha's cheeks. "Have my efforts made a difference? I've learned so much from you, John." Despite holding the title of president, I realize now how misguided I was in my approach. I was consumed by a desire to assert my authority in an industry I knew little about. It was a grave mistake. But thanks to your guidance, I've learned the importance of fostering relationships with employees and partners, ultimately earning the trust of the community. "I'm confident that my company will continue to thrive," Samantha reflected sincerely. Meanwhile, Tom, who had always been immersed in his work, found himself embarking on a new chapter as he tied the knot with a significant partner. As I witnessed Tom's happiness on his wedding day, I couldn't help but share in the joy as if it were my own. "Congratulations, you're absolutely radiant," I exclaimed, admiring Tom's appearance. "Well, it's all thanks to the impeccable design of this suit. I just hope I can live up to its elegance," Tom replied with a chuckle. Sharing in the laughter, we exchanged heartfelt wishes, savoring a moment of joy that illuminated the routine of our everyday lives and transformed a fleeting occasion into a cherished memory. It was a reminder of the transformative power of clothing, and I felt privileged to be part of an industry that wielded such influence. With renewed determination, I resolved to continue crafting work that brought beauty and